$23 billion. Gone in the night. Hotels stood vacant, flights were rerouted, and Canadian snowbirds disappeared into thin air. But it was not a hurricane or a fiscal meltdown. It was man-made. A political choice so ahead of its time that it is racing through Georgia's economy at a pace more rapid than anyone could have foreseen. Georgia was the gem of the South's tourism economy for decades. A state blessed with golden beaches, barrier islands like Tybee and St. Simons, and a mild winter climate that beckoned millions fleeing the bitter Canadian and European winter. Atlanta was not just a city, it was an international hub, drawing more than 1 million foreign visitors a year. Festivals, quaint villages, pristine beaches, and world-class universities poured billions into the state, making tourism more than an industry. It was Georgia's heartbeat. $74 billion every year, nearly 500,000 jobs, from restaurants and hotels to retail, transportation, and entertainment. Every corner of the state was prospering on the world's desire to come there. Georgia had built an empire. And then, overnight, it blew up. Not because of war, not because of a natural disaster, not even because of a worldwide recession. No, it all fell apart due to one moment, one video, one political gesture, one choice that changed the world on opposite sides of oceans. By 2025, the expansion seemed irrepressible. Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, ranked as one of the world's busiest, poured visitors from Munich, Toronto, London, and Tokyo onto the South's bright stage. International conferences, concerts, and tournaments packed the calendar season round. Resort cities such as Savannah, Jekyll Island, and Sea Island prospered on the constant stream of visitors. And Canadians, America's sole largest inbound market, came to form the backbone of Georgia's winter tourism. But these weren't just sunburned tourists, cameras in tow, and back home to the States. Canadians invested big time. They bought second homes, they filled local grocery shelves, tipped waiters generously, and kept neighborhood restaurants open year-round. They brought stability, with international students pumping billions into Georgia universities, funding housing, businesses, and programs that spilled far beyond the classroom. It was a system that appeared invincible. Until June 3rd, 2025. That morning at Atlanta's airport, 2 German musicians were taken off their flight out. No cause, no charges, just hours of interrogation, embarrassment, and a forced deportation. Someone videoed it. In 2 days, the video had been watched more than 18 million times. The fallout was instantaneous. Foreign headlines called it state-sanctioned hostility. Travel sites were full of horror stories about harassment. Social media sites overflowed with racially inflammatory charges of profiling. And then the breaking point was reached. Germany issued an official travel advisory urging citizens to avoid Georgia altogether. The dominoes fell quickly. Atlanta lost over $620 million in booked events in weeks. Tour operators had wholesale cancellations. 70% of bookings lost. Lufthansa dropped its Munich to Atlanta flights. Air Canada reduced its winter flights. Delta even flew around Atlanta, going to nicer places like Toronto and Orlando. And just when the world was holding its breath for Georgia's leaders to apologize, to calm the storm, to accept responsibility, they did not. Instead, they doubled their bets. What transpired did not just cost Georgia billions. It did something more disturbing that every U.S. state should be afraid of. That no economy, no matter how dominant, is too big to fail. Instead of engaging in damage control, Georgia leaders fanned the flames. The leaders of Georgia went on national television and brushed aside international condemnation as foreign interference. The governor's administration doubled down, branding the airport spectacle not a mistake, but an act of sovereignty. And in the weeks that followed, lawmakers didn't back down. Instead, they doubled down. New laws swept through the legislature, bans on foreign land ownership, mandatory device checks for long-term visitors, tighter restrictions on short-term rentals. All of it packaged under one slogan, protecting Georgia. But to the rest of the world, the message was unmistakable. You're not welcome here. And when the world heard that message, it didn't react with demonstrations or angry protest. Instead, the backlash came gently, but much more powerfully. Tourists simply stopped coming. International bookings fell through. Hotel business in Atlanta hit bottom, 37% below last year, according to figures the state itself released. The Georgia World Congress Center, a convention behemoth, experienced over $1.2 billion of lost business in one quarter alone. Restaurant reservations in Savannah disappeared to nothing during summer months. Tour buses sat idle, drivers unemployed. Even the upscale resorts on Tybee and St. Simons, those classic havens for Canadian retirees, had their bookings cut in half. Foreign owners began putting their beach properties on the market. Property tax collections plummeted. Snowbird and rental-supported coastal economies imploded with the loss of disappearing visitors. Meanwhile, Georgia's competition did not tarry long before filling in the void left by Georgia. Nashville stole the large conventions. Charleston doubled the budget to promote tourism and recruited a cruise line once headquartered in Savannah. And Orlando, home of its theme park empire and welcoming visa policy, it became the default destination for families, corporate travelers, and foreigners. Tourism pundits distilled it down to gory simplicity. Travelers don't protest. They just book somewhere else. And Georgia stayed quiet. Empty hotel rooms, shut restaurants, decades of laborers suddenly without a paycheck. By late summer 2025, what locals had dismissed as a slow season had become an outright meltdown. But the thing that made it even scarier, there were no protests, no rallies, no raging mobs demanding reform. Only silence. The Canadians, who had been the pillars of Georgia's winter economy, simply vanished. They sold off their second homes, canceled reservations made years in advance, and quietly advised their acquaintances, don't go to Georgia. And once that unspoken consensus was formed, there was no way to reverse it. Georgia's shores, once music-filled, festival-filled, and beach-filled, stood unnaturally still. Snowbird-dependent grocery stores shut their doors. Small restaurants, beach stores, and boutique hotels either had to let employees go or shut down permanently. Business people whispered about it behind closed doors, the silent exodus. The price was catastrophic. In a few short months, 92,000 jobs were gone. Hotel housekeepers to tour bus drivers, restaurant waiters to museum curators. Neighborhoods were destroyed overnight. And these weren't just jobs. These were mortgages, tuition payments, retirements, whole lives that were shattered. When Georgia informed the rest of the world that foreign tourists didn't matter, the world replied in the most severe manner possible. It smiled and turned away. But here's the twist. It wasn't only Georgia. Aftershocks shook the nation. Following Donald Trump's re-election, Canadian tourism to the entire U.S. dropped off a cliff. Tariffs, divisive rhetoric, and political front-page headlines solidified the perception that America wasn't just unfriendly, it was explicitly hostile, even to allies. And facts bear it out. In a Longwoods International survey, 3 out of 5 Canadians admitted U.S. politics now made them less inclined to travel. If Canada, America's most loyal tourism partner, was leaving the table, then what did that say about the world at large? The reasons for the collapse were heart-wrenchingly clear. Delays on visas, gripping airport hassles, rising cultural tensions, and above all, a snowstorm of sentiment among travelers that they were quite simply not welcome. Then came the cost squeeze. With the Canadian dollar hitting an unprecedented 22-year low, what had appeared a cozy $1,000 Georgia getaway now looked silly. Why spend it in a place where you didn't feel welcome when the same money would get you to Spain? Abundance of tapas, sunshine, and attention that didn't cost extra? And it wasn't just Georgia. Trump's new trade policies caused ripples across the whole country. Prices skyrocketed everywhere. Imports, domestic vacations, even the cost of a hotel room. International flights were cut back by airlines. Rates were hiked by hotels. And America's tourism industry, the world's envy just years before, began to collapse under its own policies. The numbers are astounding. The International Trade Administration reported that in March 2025 alone, Western Europe visitor counts declined by 17%. In Ireland, Germany, and Norway, the declines were more extreme, by more than 20%. Instead of rebounding after COVID, America's tourism economy was collapsing intentionally. Industry experts had already predicted robust growth in 2025, nearly 9% higher foreign tourists. But mid-year saw that prediction turn negative, off 9.4%. That's not a bad quarter. That's tens of billions of dollars erased in real time. The U.S. Travel Association now estimates losses in 2025 will be $72 billion. And those are not just statistics on a spreadsheet. That's shuttered hotels, dark restaurants, canceled concerts, vanished tax revenues, and unemployed workers in all states. So why did it go so badly wrong? How did the country once labeled the world's most hospitable become a cautionary tale? The truth is not complicated. When you politicize hospitality, you weaponize perception. And when sour perception sets in, tourists don't argue it. They don't battle it. They don't negotiate. They simply stop coming. Georgia politicians thought their beaches, airports, and southern charm would always be greater than ugly headlines. They thought the world required them more than Georgia required the money of the world. They were wrong. What happened in Georgia isn't some kind of coincidence. It's a warning. A $74 billion economy lost through pride, short-sightedness, and an inability to understand one very simple thing. In today's global economy, perception is reality. That same lesson is now spreading. Across America's red states, those that rely on tourist dollars while championing policies that scream, "Stay away," the writing is on the wall. Can you repair it? Maybe. But here is the piece nobody wants to acknowledge. After you've made others feel unwelcome, it takes decades, sometimes decades, to get them back. And in an economy that whizzes by so fast, most workers and firms don't have time for that. If this video opened your eyes to how sparse tourism is on the ground, give it a like so that everyone else can see it too. And subscribe, naturally, because the truth is clear, politics isn't just making policy anymore. It's redefining the very economy we live in ways that most people never foresee. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. I'll catch